Welcome back to Our Life, Beginnings and Always. Like a lazy cat, you stretched your arms above your head and yawned, blinking your eyes sleepily. The day was warm and pleasant, and you were lounging on the couch in the living room, finding it difficult to do much in that moment. Your moms and Liz had gone out shopping, looking for some new items for your sister to take back and decorate her college dorm with. They had asked if you wanted to go with them, but you declined. For you, today was all about relaxation. Cove had dropped by to spend some time with you, content to join in with doing nothing. The two of you had been chatting idly as you lazed around, talking about the other things you had planned for the summer. You were sitting next to him. He sat on the couch while you sat on your own. He sat on the couch while you were fully stretched out on the other. You were stretched out across him as he sat on the couch. You were cuddling on the couch. You were stretched out across him as he sat on the couch. You had your feet propped up on one of the arm rests and used Cove as a comfy cushion beneath your head, totally settled in. Cove gently wound his fingers through your hair as you rested on his legs, equally at ease. The day dragged on, and you found yourself yawning more and more often between conversations. You had almost dozed off completely when suddenly a buzz rang out, disturbing the silence. Your phone was on its charger in the kitchen, so it couldn't have been that. Cove pulled his own phone from his back pocket and checked the screen. His movement had jostled you, so you tried to readjust your position to get it right again.
Oh.
It's my mom. Cove waved his phone in the air, giving you a small smile. I'm gonna take this. I'll be right back. He carefully nudged you to move. He made a small noise. Why do you have to leave for that? Sure. Okay. It's your mom. Can't I hear it? You held on him to keep him there. Sure. You shifted, giving him room to get up. He got to his feet and stretched out, answering the call and holding the phone to his ear as he headed off. Hey, Mom. What's up? Tell her I said hi. Don't keep me waiting long. You blew him the kiss. Tell her I said hi. He turned to give you a nod, smiling as he walked back towards the door. The door clicked behind him as he exited the house, and you sank back onto the cushions, idly trying to decide what to do next. After electing to grab your own phone from its charger, you resumed your position on the couch, tapping away at the screen. Your mind drifted away from thoughts of Cove and his phone call, with all the many ways your device could distract you. It was an effective enough way to kill the time. You had managed to do various little things when the door opened again and Cove returned. He gave you a smile as he approached, so you figured the conversation couldn't have gone too bad. You watched as Cove strolled over to where you were still sitting, He crossed his arms against the top corner of the couch, resting on them, while bending forward to lightly kiss the top of your head.
Hey.
I'm back. You gazed up at him fondly. You put a hand over his. You stretched up to his face. You tilted your head and gave him a small kiss. He met your lips with his, closing his eyes and letting you kiss him longer than the one he had given just prior. Is everything okay? Everything's fine. Just... He turned his head suddenly, running a hand through his hair and letting out an exasperated breath. He seemed nervous, but you couldn't imagine why.
Fine.
It's fine. Not anything to worry about. You raised an eyebrow at his tone, moving your head to the side to try and meet his eye. That doesn't explain what's going on. He shrugged and gave you a tight smile, trying to play whatever it actually was off as unimportant. There's nothing going on. Just stuff I can deal with later. Some other time. He was transparently avoiding the truth, and you stared back at him seriously, an indication that you weren't going to ignore what he was doing. Eventually, he broke beneath your stare, hanging his head in his hands and groaning. I need to make another trip to my mom's place. There's some stuff out there that I'm gonna use, so I'll have to go pick it up. It wouldn't make sense to ship it, and I couldn't bring the stuff back with me last time since I flew. Oh. Suddenly you understood what the phone conversation had been about. Ko was going to drive to his mom's house in Nevada. When will you go? Mom thinks it would be best to do it now, while I'm still kind of free, but... Ko pouted, giving you an unhappy look, and you could see the prospect was already taking a toll on him. I don't want to. I was just there, and for even longer than usual. Why do I have to leave right now, when it's our last summer like this? You laughed, not knowing why he was being so difficult about it. You thought it was cute, but he wanted to stay. You can hack it. I don't want you to go either. You shook your head affectionately. You thought it was cute, he wanted to stay. It showed how much he appreciated being there and spending time with you. Looking up again, you met his bright, aquamarine eyes, finding a sad smile tugging on his lips. Oh? Suddenly, his eyebrows jumped and his eyes lit up like a lamp. You could come with me. What? You should come with me. I mean, I get that the two of us live next door to each other, and my mom lives in another state. My trips there are usually to spend time with her, just the two of us. But this time it won't be like that. All I'm gonna do is drive over, stay for a night, and then pack up the car in the morning and turn around again. Most of the time will be spent in the car, so it'd be good to have another person there. Plus, you'd have the chance to see my mom again, and her place. Maybe we could even find something cool to break at on the way. You couldn't stop yourself from laughing at his enthusiasm. He blushed a little, reining himself in.
Please?
I just feel like it could be fun. Please? Could you think about it? I want to go. A road trip sounds fun. I'll have to let my moms know, but as long as we've got nothing else important on the days we pick, then there's no reason I wouldn't be able to go. He grinned from ear to ear, thrilled by the news. He put his hands on your cheeks, kissing your face all over it, having to bend down for far to do so, but he didn't mind it a bit. Then he wrapped his arms around your neck, letting out a happy sigh.
I'm so glad.
I'm so glad. This is so great. I'll call my mom back and let her know right now. You spent some time together going over your schedules and making plans for when you could take the trip. You needed to fit it in around both of your work schedules, which took a bit of doing, but came together in the end. Luckily, it was only a 2-day trip, so finding a couple free days in a row wasn't impossible. It wasn't long before the dates were finally set and all the plans were made. You were excited for the trip. You were content with the plans. You were nervous. You were feeling unsure about everything. You were excited for the trip. A short trip sounded like the perfect way to spend some time. You could listen to music, eat snacks, and enjoy the open road. No matter what you thought about things, the morning when you were due to leave arrived. It was cooler than usual, the sun barely peeking over the tops of the houses. You stood outside your house on the footpath near the road, waiting for Cove. You were feeling refreshed after a good night's sleep and an early wake-up. With your travel bag clutched in one hand, you watched as Cove finished packing up his car. He had organized all sorts of things, water bottles, snacks, and who knows what else. Cove insisted he had everything under control and didn't need help. At least you could rest easy, knowing that it was all taken care of. As you waited, you glanced over Cove's car. You knew it well. It used to belong to Mr. Hilton, and when Cove had learned to drive, it passed to him. His dad had taken the opportunity to get a newer one. It was pretty old at this point, but had served both of them well so far. You just hoped it had enough life left in it to survive a trip as long as the one you were embarking on. The slam of a door closing made you jump. You snapped back to focus and saw Cove was walking towards you. He dusted his hands off on his pants and tilted his head towards the car. That's it. Ready to go? Yeah, I'm ready. He smiled and stepped aside, giving you space to situate your own bag where you wanted it. Once everything was safely inside, he glanced back at you.
All right.
We should get started. It's gonna be a ways to go. Woo! You gave him a high five. You hugged him. You smiled back with a nod. You hugged him. He seemed surprised, but he chuckled and returned the gesture. It couldn't last for long, though time was of essence. The two of you climbed into the car and buckled up, Cove in the driver's seat, and you sitting shotgun. His eyes moved to you.
Thank you.
Thanks again for coming on this trip with me. Of course, it's no problem. After checking the mirrors and starting the engine, you pulled out of the driveway and the trip began. With a small sigh, you got cozy in your seat and watched the familiar houses in your neighborhood pass by. Cove reached over to turn on the radio. A crackle of static mixed with those old snippets of song filled the car as he flipped through the stations. Mr. Holden's car was in a good condition, but it was well older. There was no way to plug in a phone to play music, so the radio had to do. Eventually he settled on classic rock station before sitting back and resting both hands on the wheel. Is this okay? Yes, you know what I like. Yeah, it works. You nodded. Can I change it? I'd rather have it off. Yes, you know what I like. He smiled, happy with the answer. Time flew by, and with the scenery outside your window became more and more unfamiliar. Neither of you spoke for a good long while, but the quiet was comfortable. You had become all too used to each other's company over the years. Eventually, Cole broke the silence, clearing his throat softly before he spoke. It's been too long since you and I have spent time. It's been too long since you and I have spent time with my mom. I know she still comes to the neighborhood sometimes, but it's not even once a year. I'm always going to hers. I'm happy the two of us are doing this. Yeah, me too. Your elbow resting on the windowsill, you gazed out at a world that was slowly coming to life as the morning rolled on by. The sun climbed higher in the sky, forcing you to adjust the visor overhead to keep it out of your eyes. Hey, do you mind reaching back for me? Cove gave you a sidelong glance as he drove, indicating with a nod his head and a tiny smile. I want some chips, the salt and vinegar ones. That's a great flavor. I don't know how you can eat that. You didn't have a comment on his selection. That's a great flavor. Right? Eat whatever you want too. I brought a bunch of everything. Stretching out the seatbelt to give yourself space, you twisted in your spot and reached into the bag holding the snacks. It took a bit of effort to sort through the collection of goodies stuffed inside, but eventually the bag of chips crinkled beneath your fingers as you pulled them out and sat back in your seat. Here. Thanks. Do you mind opening it? His eyes lit up at the prospects of snacks, and you shook your head in amusement, popping the top of the bag. You poured a few chips into his hand. You held the open bag out towards him. Want me to feed them to you? His eyes widened, the hint of a blush creeping over his cheeks, but he steadfastly continued to face the road. No, that's okay. Can you just pour a few into my hand? Yeah, sure. Thanks. Cole held out one outstretched hand. You did your best to have the chips fall into his palm, but some did end up on the floor. After that, you rolled up the top of the bag and stowed the chips safely in the back again. When you turned to the front, it was to find Cove crushing the fistful of chips into his mouth, crunching loudly. He wiped his hand on his pants absentmindedly before gripping the wheel and spilling crumbs all over the place. You're like a little kid. You laughed at that. How can you eat that much at once? I'm impressed. Cove mumbled through his mouth full of chips, giving you a brief thumbs up. You smiled back, shaking your head in amusement at his antics. The hours drifted by much the same way as that, with the two of you snacking and chatting as the day stretched on. It was fairly calm and quiet, traveling along the open road, and you found little in the way of interruptions. At one point you passed a welcome to Nevada sign. The Cove gave a tiny cheer. He was in disbelief that the two of you were seriously all the way in another state like this. Eventually you had to stop for gas and made a detour at a small diner to grab a proper meal that didn't consist of chips and candy. After refilling both the car and your stomachs, the drive was back on, just as the sun began dipping beneath the horizon and bathing the sky in a wash of orange light. Cove informed you that there wasn't too much longer left to go. You were almost there. When night eventually fell on a blanket of darkness, the drive finally came to an end. Cove pulled into the parking lot of Kier's apartment building, the glow of the car lights disappearing as he turned off the engine and let out a heavy sigh. We made it. We're here. The two of you exchanged tired smiles, having successfully and safely completed one half of the trip. You were relieved to have actually arrived and eager to get out of the car and stretch your legs. You took the stairs up to the building together. After a knock, you were abruptly met by a flash of green hair as Kira opened the door and Amelia took her son in her arms. There he is, my gigantic baby boy. She squeezed him for a moment, and before she could let go, Cove embraced her tightly back. It was a hold that reaffirmed of all the love he had for her as his mom. She stroked the top of his head in response. When his grip finally loosened, she pulled back so she could examine his face. Are you even taller than the last time I saw you? Cove gave you a look and rolled his eyes amusedly as she patted the tops of his shoulders proudly. You could say that every time I'm here. It doesn't even make sense right now. My last visit wasn't that long ago. Kira simply laughed before letting him go fully and ushering the two of you into her apartment. Then she turned to you, a wide grin pulling at her lips. Jamie, it's so nice you came along with. And as a bonus, you've both arrived in one piece. Yeah, it's good to see you. It's been a long time. Kira beamed at you both, and while you would have loved nothing more than to settle down and rest after the drive, you could see she wasn't going to let you go that easily. So, how was the trip? I admit, I was just a pinch worried. We barely made it. I appreciate your concern, but it was alright. You felt the fussing was unnecessary. You let Cove answer that. It was fine. No problems for us. Kira clapped her hands together, the bracelets around her wrist jingling. I'm so proud! I can hardly believe how mature you both are. Where did all those smarts come from? Cove ran a hand over his hair with an awkward chuckle. I don't know. Maybe I got some from my parents. His mom looked up at him deeply, her eyes glistening as she shook the sentimentality off with the wave of her hand. You have to be half asleep already, huh? I don't want to keep you up much longer. Early morning and any hoosies. How do you want to deal with the sleeping arrangements? I've only got my own room and Cove's, though the living room couch isn't bad. Jamie can use my bed. I'll just sleep on the floor in the room. It doesn't matter for one night. Kira laughed out loud, startling you both. You raised an eyebrow at her outburst, giving her a quizzical look. Oh yeah, you'll just stay on the floor. You couldn't handle that much back when you were 13 with both your parents in the room? Cove blushed a dark red and gaped, completely unprepared for her to pull out that embarrassing moment from the past. Hey! Mom! You blushed. You laughed it off. He's had a long day. It's cruel to tease the poor boy so late, even if it's true. Yup, she's right. That's totally what you do. You were annoyed. She knows he's insensitive. It was uncalled for. He's had a long day. It's cruel to tease the poor boy so late, even if it's true. Cove hung his head in defeated embarrassment while you and Kira chuckled together. You're right. I'm just so happy you're here. I'll take the floor. took the floor when we were kids. I ought to let him have the bed now. Coach shook his head, dismissing the idea immediately.
No.
You're the guest. Alright, I'll have the bed. Thank you for offering. So, would you be okay with me sleeping on the floor in the room? I'd rather be there than out in the open in the living room, even if there is the couch. Yeah, you could sleep there. Kira giggling softly, drawing your attention back to her. All funny stuff aside, you need to get some sleep for tomorrow. Seems like you're setting yourselves up to not get any. I know that sounds really captious, but I'm a mom. I have to say these things. Come on, we're not little kids having a sleepover. We're responsible adults, right, Jamie? Yes, very responsible. Cove is, though I can say the same for myself. Yes, very responsible. She gave the two of you a suspicious look, and you stood up straighter, trying to prove your point. I'll leave it at that then. For now, just remember that the walls are thin in this apartment. If you can't settle down and sleep, I might have to separate you. We'll be good.
Marvelous.
Perfect. Kira clasped her hands together, her bracelets softly tinkling against each other again. It's only getting later, so I better let you prepare for bed. She nodded towards the hallway and gave you a small smile. I'll play hostess for a sec and show you where the bathroom is first, Jamie, and where you'll be staying the night. Thank you. You hoisted your travel bag back over your shoulder and followed behind Kira and down the hallway. Cove shuffled along behind you, disappearing into the bedroom while his mom had you go to the restroom. The apartment was small but nicely decorated in soft, cool colors, with plenty of artwork hanging on the walls to give it character. It was stylish and exactly what you would have expected from someone like Kira. After being shown the bathroom and wishing Kira good night, you headed into the room and found Cove already there. He had changed into his sleepwear for the night, as well as set aside his glasses already. Looking around, you found the bedroom to look much the same as the rest of the apartment, but with small ocean elements you were sure Cove must have enjoyed when he stayed here. All in all, the room was pretty clean, though it almost looked more like a hotel guest room than a bedroom. Cove only spent a few weeks out of the year there, so it made sense that it wasn't especially lived in.
So?
What do you think? It's pretty nice, huh? Mom always keeps it clean and everything, even when I'm not here. It's a great room. It seriously looks like a hotel room. That's sweet of her. That's sweet of her. Yeah, she's good like that. He seemed pleased enough with the response and gave you a small smile before opening the zip on his bag. When you went back to the room, you jumped in bed and under the covers, just as Cove was shuffling into his sleeping bag on the floor. You waited until he was settled in before you flipped off the lights and a soft glow from the outside peeked through the blinds, casting shadows over the floor. You closed your eyes, blocking everything out.
Night.
Night, Jamie. Night, Cove. Sleep well. The room got quiet as the two of you wound down for the night, and you found yourself listening to the sounds of the city outside the window. The noise out there was so different to what you were used to back home. Cars zooming past and people out having fun instead of crashing waves and the ocean winds cocooning your house in their embrace. Cole shifted around in his sleeping bag, making the fabric crinkle noise loudly. I've outgrown this thing. I should have checked it earlier, but the trip was kind of short notice. Why don't we share? It's big enough. Coben held deeply, the fabric of his sleeping bag crinkling loudly as he fidgeted beneath. I told my mom I was gonna stay on the floor. He frowned, wondering when that had ever stopped him before. Did he really plan on going through with that? No. He hesitated a little, the silence stretching between you. You couldn't help but smile to yourself. You knew him well. The sleeping bag rustled again, and through the dim light you saw him stand and head towards the bed. He took in a deep breath as he ran his hands across the top of the blanket, gathering his nerves as his eyes met yours. And then he paused, head tilted to the side, as if silently asking permission. It's all right. You shuffled over to make room for him as he pulled the bedding up and crawled beneath the covers, leaving the two of you close together, but not quite touching. He exhaled a heavy breath as he lay down on his side, his head getting comfy on the pillow next to yours. You had a strange feeling in your stomach, like it was doing little somersaults, but it felt good to have him close. He raised his fingers and delicately brushed the tips over your cheeks, drawing a shaky sigh from your lips. His touch was warm and feather-like, making you feel tingly all over. When his eyes met yours again, you found yourself lost in them, the world becoming still and silent around you. Then he froze, his muscles tensing as he closed up like a clam, and his breath hitched in his throat. He attempted to whisper something, but it was completely lost on you. With that having to suffice as a warning, Cobe jumped out of the bed and crouched down on the floor, his head held in his hands as he took in a few deep, stuttering breaths. You bolted upright in the bed, staring down at him with a mixture of alarm and bemusement. Are you okay?
I'm always like this.
I thought it'd feel like it did before when we were younger, but it's different now. I'm sorry, Jamie. Really sorry. I'm so. He panted deeply in and out, as though he had just finished running an entire marathon. After finally steadying his breathing to a normal rhythm, he crawled back into his sleeping bag and huddled down on the floor, his back turned to you. Sorry. He usually needed at least one trial run before he could take that kind of step forward. We can always try again another night. Thank you for trying. He made a small noise, acknowledging that he had heard you, but said no more. With the event over, you laid back down in bed alone for this night. The next day dawned, bringing with it the sounds of birds chirping happily outside the window. You opened your eyes slowly, letting them adjust to the light as you tried to recall where you were and remember the unfamiliar sight of Cove's second bedroom. You had woken up on your own. You reached over to turn off the alarm you had set. Cove had nudged you awake. Rise and shine, Jamie. Cove shook your shoulder and you groaned dramatically and buried your head beneath your pillow. 5 more minutes.
No way.
No way. We've got to get started. Sitting up in bed, you let out a yawn and stretched your arms above your head. You still felt pretty groggy. You felt okay. You were quite refreshed. You felt okay. Considering the long drive the day before and the late night, you were feeling ready to get the day started. Though you weren't as perky as him, his energy was infectious. Good morning. You pull yourself out of bed, grabbing a fresh change of clothes and your toiletries before heading to the bathroom. After all that, you met Cove back in his room. He was sitting on the floor when you entered, sorting through a bunch of stuff in a box, determining what to bring and what to leave behind. Hey.
Hey.
Hey. Can you pull out the stuff in those drawers? You nodded, though he hadn't even looked up from his task, so you knew he wouldn't have seen. Heading over to the drawers, she started the task, taking out various items and setting them out on the ground in front of Cove. After a while, it became clear to you that Cove was acting strange whenever you went near him. He was flinching over your presence. It happened a few more times before you couldn't take the awkwardness any longer. You dropped the stuff you were holding down in front of him and raised a questioning eyebrow. Is everything okay?
I'm sorry.
Yeah, sorry. I'm sorry about last night, again. He quietly squeaked the second part of his thought. About not staying in bed with you. I know you try not to mind or be mad at me, but I wish I didn't have to make you accept me backtracking all the time. He swallowed thickly, struggling to find the right words to explain himself. I do think it felt nice, really. It's just also not bad, but good in an inconvenient way.
I mean...
Laying together like that, being so close, it gets too hot, you know? His cheeks flushed with color and he immediately trailed off, his eyes firmly fixed on the floor. It was that intense for you, huh? Maybe I'm the one who should apologize. I'm sorry to bother you. It was that intense for you, huh? Maybe I'm the one who should apologize. His eyes widened, a pink tinge creeping onto his cheeks before he could duck his head enough to hide it. Just don't worry about it. You don't need to do anything. Let's get back to packing. With it more or less resolved, you went to grab some more items as Cove focused on the box in front of him once again. Oh hey, look at this! When you turned towards the sound of Cove's voice, you found him digging through one of the drawers beneath the bed.
Neat.
Here's something I definitely need to bring. Neat! Craning your head, you got a better glimpse of what he was holding. Very old jump rope and hacky sack. Those had been gifts you'd given to him for his mom's place. Something for him to remember you by and make his time here less lonely. He kept them the whole time. You don't have to hold on to those forever. I was only lending you those. I think I'll take them back now. You jumped. It's adorable that you care so much for them. You started to feel emotional. Cove looked up at you when you sniffled quietly, seeming concerned. You wiped away the tears that were building in your eyes, feeling a little silly. Sorry. He smiled at you, his face softening. Why would you apologize? It's alright. It's wonderful. Thank you.
It's nice.
These are special. It was important, having a piece of you with me when we were apart. I feel that way, same way. That's why I gave them to you. And Cove smiled, pleased that the feeling was mutual, but then the expression became more amused. And did you keep the souvenirs I brought back? Of course, his grin grew to completion. Thanks. Another hour passed by in silence, and you were happy to see you were making great progress with Cove's room, with only the closet left to sort through. You took a minute to take a mouthful of water from your bottle and perched on the edge of the bed, feeling productive. Cove glanced over at you and paused, putting down the tape gun he had been using to seal up his boxes. You raised an eyebrow. You know, it's really strange to see you sitting in this room. Why? He frowned a little, his eyes distant and his voice quiet when he spoke next.
That's...
During the visits to Mom's, when I was sitting alone in this room, I'd sometimes think about how you weren't here. It was a weird feeling at the time that you weren't around, and now that you are here, in this exact place, I don't know how to explain the feeling. He shrugged it off and smiled a little, as though he'd said enough already and didn't want to risk sounding silly. Life is pretty confusing, is all. I didn't know you thought about me when you were away. I missed you so much when you were gone. His brows crinkled as he looked at you solemnly, his eyes bright with emotion. I missed you too, all the time. It made you feel better to know that when you were stuck at home missing his company, that he was missing yours too. He looked away satisfied, heading over to the closet and the last of the items to be sorted. Before long, every box, closet, and drawer had been thoroughly combed through, with the items either neatly packed up in boxes or organized and returned to their proper place. With a sigh of relief, you glanced around the bedroom and the work you had done together.
All right.
We're done. Good job to us. I'm gonna change out of my PJs for the drive. Yeah. When the two of you headed out into the living room, ready to get everything finalized and hit the road, you found Kira in the kitchen, pouring a cup of tea. Cove headed towards her, leaning casually against the counter that divided the two spaces. Hey, you didn't have to get up so early.
Come on.
Are you crazy? Of course I have to see you off before you go. You can't sneak away while I'm out cold. She beamed at him, and in all honesty, seemed more than happy to be up and getting ready for the day. Do you want some breakfast? I've got some Mizuli. Or eggs and toast? Oh, and some of that fruity cereal you used to love? That's okay. We should really eat on the road. Kira smiled sadly and a little disappointed, but she seemed to understand that your time was running thin. I thought you might say that. In that case, I've packed you some snacks for the road.
What do you think?
Even if you don't end up eating them, take it anyway, just in case. You can always feed them to Cliff when you get home. And tell him I said hi. Cove laughed and shook his head, knowing his dad would love nothing more than to polish off whatever food Kira had prepared for you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mom. You really did have to. Thank you for the snacks. That's nice of you to organize this for us. It must be a mom thing to know stuff like that. I'll definitely eat whatever you packed. You smiled quietly at her. Thank you for the snacks. I'm sure they'll come in handy with this guy around. Cove scoffed and playfully rolled his eyes, earning a giggle from Kira. I don't doubt it. Like father, like son. She returned your smile with one of her own before putting her cup of tea aside. Well, I'll help you get the car packed.
Sure.
Sure. Thanks. The three of you got to move on, taking the boxes from Cove's bedroom and heading down to fill the back seat of the car until there was barely an inch of space left in the back and trunk. With all of you helping, it only took a couple of trips to move everything, and you were done before you knew it. Then it was truly time to say goodbye. You convened back inside the apartment, where Kira looked over the two of you with a quiet smile. It was great to see you both. Thank you for coming. She gave each of you a hug, and you felt a little sad that you hadn't been able to spend more time with her. It was good to see you too, Mom. Cove embraced her in return, the two of them holding on to each other for a few seconds longer. I'll miss you, but I'll visit again soon.
Of course.
You better. Hey, we should make plans for you to visit us too. I'll let you know when it's settled. I'd love that. Kira bundled all the stuff she prepared into a bag and handed them over to you. You took a quick peek at what she had packed. There was fruit, nuts, seeds, hard-boiled eggs, and some veggie sticks.
Cool.
Oh, good to see we've got some fresh food options now. The snacks I brought weren't. Kira shook her head at him and let out a soft laugh, as though she wouldn't have expected anything else. I seriously hope you're feeding yourself better than that at home. Yeah, of course. Just not on trips. I can live with that then. She looked over him fondly, her eyes at last focusing on his face and filling with emotion. I'm going to miss you, baby.
Me too.
Me too. Goodbye. Thank you for letting us come. We'll all be together again before you know it. You didn't know what to say. Thank you for letting us come. No problem at all. You're welcome anytime. Kira put an arm around you both, pulling you in tight to her sides for one final squeeze.
Bye.
Have a safe trip. We will. With the last goodbye, you exited the apartment, though. Cove hesitated for a moment in the door, his expression distant. You weren't sure what he was doing, though you attentively took a step towards him. Everything okay? Your voice seemed to bring him back to earth, and he shook his head to clear his thoughts, his green hair swaying from side to side.
Come on.
Yeah, let's go. With that, the two of you headed back down to the car, ready to make the long trip home. Soon enough, you were on the wide open road with a car full of Cove's things and only one destination, Sunset Berg, California. The drive went as smoothly as could be expected, with the morning slowly creeping into midday as the miles flew by. The day flew by in the whir of open road and sunshine, and before you knew it, it was early afternoon. By that point, you had already crossed the state line. Cove announced that he planned a little stop on the way home. He was quite pleased with himself as you arrived at the precipice. The Redwood National Park. Shaded beneath the canopy of enormous redwood trees, you drove along. When Cove parked the car, you pushed the door to get out, and the first thing you did was look up. Enormous redwood trees surrounded you on all sides, their massive trunks shooting straight up into a canopy of foliage overhead. There were too many of them to count, stretching on and on as far as you could see. You squinted against the sunlight that was peeking through the leaves and dancing on the paths around you. It's great, right? He smiled at you from over the roof of the car before glancing around the place fondly. Remember the trip our families took here that one summer? It was cool going on a journey and seeing the forest in person, even if we didn't stay very long.
So,
And I guess we can stay for even less this time. But oh well. It just seemed like a good time to stop by. Who knows when we'll get another chance. His voice got a little softer at the end. It seemed to be bittersweet for him, being in a place he was so fond of, but not having the time to appreciate it fully. You were pleased to have stopped there. It was a beautiful place to stretch your legs and take in some fresh air. Thanks for bringing me here. There will be more chances in the future, I promise. It's better than taking a break at a gas station. I'll put up with you for the trees. I'll put up with this place for you. There will be more chances in the future, I promise. Cole smiled, shoving his hands in his pockets and dipping his head. I'm gonna hold you to that. The two of you walked around for a while, completely dwarfed by the sheer scale of the redwoods. It kind of put your view of yourself and everything in a strange perspective. You took in a lungful of clean forest air, listening to the sounds of birdsong, the cool breeze rustling through the underbrush, taking advantage of the space to move around freely. However you felt about being there, it was a totally different scene than sitting in that old car for hours and hours. You wrapped an arm around Cove. You took Cove's hand. You felt Cove nudge your hand. You wrapped an arm around Cove. He relaxed into your touch and smiled at you fondly, enjoying the closeness. Being here again, you couldn't help but reminisce on what else had happened during the trip you had taken here all that time ago. There were a lot of things that had reminded you of it recently. You looked over at Cove, who seemed to be lost in the peace of the place, and you wondered if any of it crossed his mind. Smiling at the sight, you thought back on what had been a highlight of that long-gone vacation. You know, we spent the night in the loft together. Elizabeth teased us mercilessly on that trip, remember? Our families were so close. Remember how a bird stole your dad's lunch? I had forgotten the classic Inklet chat. You managed it then? I was stupider then. Sorry. You had to crack a smile and left the little debacle from last night behind you again. There was barely enough room for the two of us, but it was fun. Cobb chuckled and shook his head at the moment. It was memorable, especially when I got up there by my parents in the morning. He laughed, and soon enough you were joining him. It had been pretty embarrassing for him at the time, but you were glad he could look back and laugh about it now. You continued chatting about the trip a little while longer, about the things you had seen and done and even eaten. A lot of the memories Cobb had of the trip were similar to your own, but you were also surprised to hear of a few other things from his point of view. So much had happened that there was no shortage of things to talk about. The place certainly had a nostalgic quality about it. Hey, Jamie? You looked over at the sound of Cobb saying your name to find him smiling at you, seeming relaxed amongst the nature of the park. You have gorgeous eyes. The words left his lips and you froze, completely taken aback by the compliment. He blushed, but his gaze remained on you. That's another thing that happened during the trip. I could never forget. You found it difficult to hide your blush. You put a hand to your forehead, pretending to swoon. Your eyes are much more beautiful. I could never forget. The both of you blushed simultaneously, your faces as red as the others. Your spirits were light as you ambled past information boards and picnic areas. But before long, you decided it was time to bring this short stop to an end and head back to the car to get on the road again. Cobb sighed when you finally raced the vehicle, jangling the keys in his hand before unlocking the doors.
Well,
I wish we didn't have to go, but we're going to be responsible and not stay longer than we should. How grown-up of you. He smiled slightly, and with that, the two of you jumped into the car, buckled in, and he put it in drive. You were getting closer and closer to town as the sun started setting, though we're still far enough away that the radio stations were unfamiliar to you. Oh, that's cute. Cobb twisted the dial this way and that before stumbling onto a channel with a song he seemed to like. There was a rare gift from the fates in a sea of static, strange radio jockeys and grating tunes. His face immediately brightened at the sound of it, and he drummed his fingers along the bottom of the steering wheel happily. Sitting back in his seat, he bobbed his head along the time to the tune. You smiled. You chuckled softly. You shook your head. You sang along. Cobb raised a pleased eyebrow at your vocalization. Emboldened by you, Cobb decided to do a little lip syncing. Every now and then a part would be stumbled over, and by the end you were both laughing too much to continue. The song ended and Cobb reached over to start cycling through the radio stations again. Upon finding nothing tolerable, he flipped the dial off in defeat and leaned back in his seat with a sigh. You rested your head on your hand and stared out the window at the sky darkened, watching the landscape slowly melt into more familiar views. The miles went on, and any energy you had earlier was beginning to drain away. You imagined home and your family. You'd be there together soon. You know, I've spent all these years living in Sunset Bird and taking a few weeks each summer visiting my mom in that second room. That's not gonna happen anymore. Not really. I can still see my parents. But the way it all works between us has changed forever. He paused, the silence stretching. A serious look settled on his face. His thoughts far away. I'm excited to be on the brink of real adulthood. I'm worried about how things will be in the future. I feel the same about my parents too. I'm excited to be on the brink of real adulthood. There are so many experiences we've yet to do. Closed mouth pulled into a tight line. Billy gave a small nod. Cole stared straight ahead, down the long, long road. The path looked like it'd never end from where you were, but that wasn't true. Eventually, he found a few more words to say.
I'm so glad.
I think it's good we are able to do this trip without any parents or chaperones. It was just us. We did it all. I don't know, I feel a little more independent now. A little more ready for what's ahead. Right. I felt ready for a while now. It's exciting. The topic seemed to wear on Cove, and he made an attempt to find something else to speak on. So I'm kind of sad about getting back. I'm gonna miss having you right there tonight. He cleared his throat quietly, though said nothing more. You smiled to yourself a little at hearing him saying something like that out loud. I'm gonna miss it too. And with the feelings confirmed as mutual, the two of you fell into a comfortable silence. The sky outside grew ever darker as the hours passed by, the stars blinking on like tiny fireflies painting onto a canvas of blue. The scenery continued transitioning between open roads, industrial areas, and beach towns, becoming increasingly recognizable as time went on. You felt somewhat disconnected from the world around you as you watched it through your window, your tired mind growing hazy. It was a strange, reflective feeling, but peaceful nonetheless. Soon enough, the world would return to you, and you'd find your feet firmly on the ground. It could be helped. It couldn't be helped. The adventure would end. Life could continue, but your memories would linger on. I'm gonna save. And that does it for this episode. Thank you for joining me and watching the story of Cove and Jamie. My story. Our life. Beginnings and always. Thank you. Bye.